For those dealing with acute or very sudden low back pain, things like bending forward to pick something off the floor, bending over to tie your shoes, or even getting in and out of a chair can be very painful. And not only is it painful, but if you're doing it improperly and you're pushing through the pain every time, it can keep you from getting better. So we're going to go over some strategies to help you pick things up more comfortably, get in and out of a chair more comfortably, and do things like tie your shoes with less discomfort. So the first thing that we need to go over is a movement called a hip hinge. When you go to pick something up and you're not thinking about it, prior to you having any pain, you probably just bent over without even giving it any thought. But when the back hurts, we don't want to be moving too much through the spine. We don't want to be rounding the spine out too much. We want to have the majority of our movements come from the hips. This will keep our spine in a nice neutral position and not stress it too much. So when we're doing something like a hip hinge, I want you to think of a deadlift or a squat. These are the kind of movements that we want to mimic. And one way that we can train a hip hinge, or you can train yourself to do one, is to grab a broomstick. You're going to put it on your back, just like this. I want it touching your tailbone, your mid-back, and the back of your head. And I don't want it to come off any of those 3 points while we do this. From here, all you're going to do is have a slight bend in your knees and push your butt backwards. And you can see that my spine is in a nice neutral position and I'm not overly rounding it, causing any discomfort. So again, you're going to take that broomstick, it's going to contact your tailbone, your mid-back, and the back of your head, and you're going to push your butt back, initiating that movement from the hips. So anytime that you're bending over to pick something up, picking up your kids, picking up your laundry, that movement must be initiated from the hips, okay? Same thing goes for when we're getting in and out of a chair. How people typically do this when their back hurts is they round their back, sit down, and then when they get up, same thing. They are pushing through their hands, which is then putting a lot of stress through the back, and they're not doing themselves any favors. So how we're gonna do this is you're gonna stand with the chair right behind you, plant your feet, keep a nice proud chest, and you're going to initiate the movement from the hips. First movement is butt back, as we sit down nice and comfortably, and then to stand up, we're just gonna reverse it. Plant those feet, get your weight forward, nice proud chest, and pushing the feet through the floor, not the hands through the knees, causing your back to round. So that is the hip hinge for picking things off the floor. That's the hip hinge for sitting down and standing up. But doing something like tying your shoes can be a little bit more difficult with a hip hinge. So all we want to do is we want to bring our foot up to us as opposed to bringing ourselves down to our shoe. So best way to do that is to put your foot on an elevated surface, and then we hip hinge. Then we bend from the hips and we tie our shoe so we're not rounding too much and putting all that stress through the back. Lastly, sometimes we don't need to be doing a big hip hinge to pick something up. When you're picking up your kids, when you're picking up your laundry, you probably should be. But if you're just picking something small like a pen off the floor, you don't need to be doing that. You can simply do a backwards lunge, keeps the spine in a nice neutral position, or you can do the golfer's pickup if you're confident of your balance. Okay, so in summary, when we have acute or sudden low back pain, we probably want to avoid rounding from the back too much. That's where the movement, the hip hinge, will come into play. The first movement we want to do is push the butt back, bending from the hips, keeping the spine nice and neutral. We're going to do that movement when we're picking something large off the floor and when we're getting in and out of a chair. When we're tying our shoes, we're going to bring that foot up towards us and hip hinge from there. And then when you're picking up something smaller off the floor that just doesn't require as much strength, the reverse lunge or the golfer's pickup is a good way to go. Hope that was helpful.